Hello class, I'm going to be reading Macbeth to you. That's what this video is for. Also, I'm making lots of annotations, so you got to pay attention to those, and I will share this document with you eventually so that you can see the annotations at your own speed. Alright, I'm going to go back. I know I've already read scene 1, but I'm going to read it again because that other video was really me just showing you how to blog. And now I want to show you how to read Macbeth. So, Act 1, Scene 1, a desert place, thunder and lightning, and enter the three witches. When shall we three meet again, in thunder, lightning, or in rain? When the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won. That will be ere the set of sun. Where the place? Upon the heath. There to meet with Macbeth. Then a cat screams off stage, I come, Grey Malkin. And then a frog ribbits, Paddock calls. And then the third witch says anon. And then they start chanting, they probably say this several times, fair is foul and foul is fair. Hover through the fog and filthy air. Alright. They know when the battle's going to end, and they know when it's going to begin, and they know who's going to win it, because these witches can predict the future. So they have superpowers. They talk to animals, and they also say one of the major themes of the play, which is fair is foul and foul is fair. What that means is that we're entering a world that is topsy-turvy. Okay, how can something that is fair be foul, and how can something that is foul be fair? Well, as we read, we're going to be getting the answers to this question. It's also an antimetaboly, which means the first part of the sentence is repeated, but in mixed order in the second part of the sentence. So that is a literary device that Macbeth uses. And that's the end of the scene. It's very brief. Shakespeare wanted to write a play that featured witches because the new king of England at the time, James I of Scotland, was big on witchcraft. He read books, and I think he even wrote a book on witchcraft, so it's one of his interests. And Shakespeare wanted to, make a good impression on the new monarch, so he wrote Macbeth. Okay, in the next scene, we are at a camp, a military camp outside of a place called Forres. Alarum within means that like trumpets are blared, da, 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 because the king is entering. Duncan is the king. He's being followed by his son Malcolm, his other son Donalbain, Lennox, who's just a thane, and some other attendants. And there is a wounded soldier on the stage already. And Duncan says, What bloody man is that? He can report, as seemeth by his plight, of the revolt, the newest state. So he'll have information about the last battle. Malcolm says, This is the sergeant who, like a good and hardy soldier, fought against my captivity. Hail, brave friend, say to the king the knowledge of the broil as thou didst leave it. So the sergeant's going to give an account of the battle that he was just in. Doubtful it stood, he's injured, as two spent swimmers that do cling together and choke their art, the merciless McDunwald, worthy to be a rebel, for to that the multiplying villainies of nature do swarm upon him. From the western isles of kerns and gallows is supplied, and fortune, on his damned quarrel smiling, showed like a rebel's whore. But all's too weak, for brave Macbeth, well he deserves that name, disdaining fortune, and with brandished steel, that's a sword, which smoked with bloody execution, like valor's minion, carved out his passage till he faced the slave, which ne'er shook hands, nor bade farewell to him, till he unseamed him from the nave to the chops, and fixed his head upon our battlements. And Duncan's reply to that is, O valiant cousin, worthy gentleman. It makes Duncan happy to hear this news. What did the sergeant just talk about? Well, McDunwald is a Scottish man, lord who is a thane of Duncan. He's supposed to be loyal to Duncan, but he is a rebel. Scotland is in a civil war, and Duncan is the king, and so he's got to fight down all the people who have gone against him. And Macbeth, who is loyal to Duncan, fights MacDunwald on the battlefield. And the sergeant is describing Macbeth's savagery on the battlefield. His sword was so busy cutting people that it smoked with bloody execution. So he's just cutting his way through the opposing army like a guy with a machete walking through tall grass. And it's very, very formidable. And then when he gets face to face with MacDunwald, the traitor, he didn't shake his hand or say anything to him. He unseamed him from the knave to the chaps, which I love that line. If you put your finger in your belly button, that's your knave, and that's where Macbeth stabbed MacDunwald. And then he unseamed him from there to the chaps, which is your chops, which is at your throat. So Macbeth is a badass. He killed MacDunwald and sent him to hell. Then he cut off his head, and then he put it on a stick, and then he put it on the tower of the castle, saying, "This is what happens when you mess with Duncan." So our first impression of the title character, Macbeth, is that he is like a superhero. He's like a Beowulf kind of. He's really good at killing people in battle. All right. And this pleases Duncan because Macbeth is loyal to Duncan. All right. Oh, wait, there's more. The sergeant continues to talk even though he's wounded. "As whence the sun gins his reflection, shipwrecking storms and direful thunders break, so from that spring whence comfort seemed to come, discomfort swells. Mark, King of Scotland, mark!" Mark means listen to me. "No sooner justice had with valor armed, compelled these skipping kerns to trust their heels, but the Norwegian lord, surveying vantage, with furbished arms and new supplies of men, began a fresh assault." So while MacDunwald's soldiers were retreating, Norway, who had their own army, decides to try and attack Macbeth. And Duncan asks, "Dismayed not this our captains, Macbeth and Banquo?" And the sergeant sarcastically says yes. He's like, yeah, they were scared, like eagles are scared of sparrows, or lions are scared of rabbits. So he says, "Yes, as sparrows, eagles, or the hare the lion. If I say sooth, I must report they were as cannons overcharged with double cracks. So they redoubled strokes upon the foe, except they meant to bathe in reeking wounds, or memorize another Golgotha. I cannot tell, but I am faint. My gaseous cry for help." He says, basically Macbeth and Banquo fought the Norwegians too, and killed so many people. It was like that part of town outside of Jerusalem where all the people get killed, namely Jesus. All right, it's a kind of a strange metaphor. Makes people uncomfortable. But this is all good news for Duncan because Macbeth won, and Banquo too. "So well thy words become thee as thy wounds. They smack of honor both. Go, get him surgeons." The sergeant exits. "Who comes here?" Enter Ross, who is another thane, and Malcolm says, "It's the worthy thane of Ross." Lennox says, "What a haste looks through his eyes, so should he look that seems to speak things strange." Ross greets the king. "God save the king. Whence camest thou, worthy thane?" "From Fife, great king." Now, Fife is the land that is owned by Macduff, who has not been named yet. But Ross is bringing news from Fife, where there has been civil war fighting as well, where the Norwegian banners flout the sky and fan our people cold. Norway himself, with terrible numbers, assisted by that most disloyal traitor, the Thane of Cawdor, began a dismal conflict, till that Bellona's bridegroom, lapped in proof, confronted him with self-comparisons, point against point, rebellious arm against arm, curbing his lavish spirit, and to conclude, the victory fell on us! And then they cheer, yay! We'll get back to Bellona's bridegroom in just a minute. Let's finish the scene. Duncan says, that is great happiness, that now Sweynjo, the Norway's king, craves composition, nor would he deign him burial of his men, till he dispersed at St. Colm's Inch $10,000 to our general use. No more that Thane of Cawdor shall deceive our bosom interest. Go, pronounce his present death, and with his former title greet Macbeth. I'll see it done. What he hath lost, noble Macbeth hath won. Okay, so here's what happened. Over in the land of Fife, which is a part of Scotland, the Norwegians had attacked. And so there was a battle, and the Scottish army won. A lot of people think that Ross is describing more of Macbeth's fighting ability, but this is a mistake. It has been a mistake since the year 1700 when somebody wrote the footnote wrong, and it's been perpetuated for hundreds of years. But how could Macbeth be in Fife when he was fighting MacDunwald at that exact same time? Fife is owned by Macduff, who hasn't even been introduced yet, but he's the Thane of Fife. So he is Bellona's bridegroom. Macduff is, not Macbeth. Because how does Macbeth fight? He's savage. He cuts through people like he's cutting through hay, and he unseams people from the nave to the chops. Okay, that Macduff does things the right way. He took prisoners. The Thane of Cawdor was a rebel against Scotland that had teamed up with Norway. And that's who Macduff defeated on the battlefield. But he doesn't kill Macduff. He captures him and lets Ross pass sentence. Okay? Macduff beats Norway and then gets compensation for it. $10,000 for the army, for the Scottish army. And he takes Cawdor prisoner, and Duncan pronounces that Cawdor, the traitor, will be put to death, which is the right way to do it. Now, he's going to take the title, the Thane of Cawdor. This is what Duncan is going to do. He's going to announce that Macbeth will be the new Thane of Cawdor. So all the land and property that Cawdor used to have will now go to Macbeth as his reward for beating back MacDunwald and some Norwegians. So the Civil War is over, and Duncan and the Scottish army win. So next is going to be time to dole out the rewards. That is the end of scene 2. I'm going to stop there and pick up to scene 3 in my next video.